We acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. We also pay respects to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting or attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia present here. So with that, welcome to today's webinar on Microsoft Forms. I do like to start all our webinars with just a handy tip, because I do know that some people are trying to attend with just one screen. This is quite a hands-on session. I will show you some examples to get in the beginning, but after I've gone through some examples, it's very hands-on. So if you are trying to join with one screen, you could, if it's a Windows machine, use the Windows key and the left or right arrow to split your key, to split your screen, so you can see what I'm doing and follow along. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now. So where I am is in Microsoft Forms, and you can get to Microsoft Forms through several different ways. You can get to it through EdPass. You can get to it if you're using the Edge browser through going to the M365 app launcher. And I'll take you into that when we get into the hands-on part of the session. But to begin with, I'm just going to go through some examples so you get an idea of what is possible with Microsoft Forms. So the first example I'm showing you, you've actually got a link to this in the handout. And this is a quiz that you could use with your middle school students or your primary or your secondary students. This particular quiz is something called a branching quiz. Now, this is the teacher view at the moment, so it's not what the students see. But if I click on preview, this is what the students will be seeing. And, oh, I've got to log in. Let's try again. So this one here is branching, which means that I can tailor it so that depending on what the student responds, it provides the next question for them. So in this example, if the student has picked an answer that's incorrect, me as a teacher can add some extra information to support them to get the correct answer so they can try again. Oops. Let's try and move on and go to the next question. The next example here is a form that you might use with external people. So one of the fantastic things about Forms, Microsoft Forms, is that you can use it and share it with outside of the department. So not all of the Microsoft apps allow you to share with external people, but Microsoft Forms is one of those that you can. So this example here is a registration form for canteen volunteers. It's got some questions that have got red stars next to them. That means that the people have to respond to them. This is again the back end, and if I go to the preview here, I can see what this would look like if I was a parent filling this out. And again, this one's got branching, so if I click daily, it's got some additional questions in there. So there's lots of examples of how you might use this, especially Natasha, if you're wanting parents to give you feedback or volunteer and things like that. This next example here is again a bit of a quiz. This is a maths quiz though. So Microsoft has got built-in equations and things like that. So it's really handy if I add new, let's see if I can add new choice, for example, and I add it in, whoops, add new choice, and I add in an equation here. So y4 times 6 equals, oops, better put in x. it gives you all sorts of options there that you can add, and it will tell you what the correct one is as well. So that's a bit of a time saver if you're a maths teacher or you're a primary teacher using maths. You can type in some equations and it will make up some answers for you without you having to do the thinking. Okay, this is another example. So this here is how students might use Microsoft Forms. So all our students from Year 2 up get assigned a Microsoft 365 login with their @schools email address. And so they can go into Microsoft 365 and they can create their own forms themselves. So instead of having the students create something on paper and print it out or photocopy it, you could have your students go in, create something in Forms. They could share this link with their classmates, but they can also share it with their family and the wider community. So there are quite a few students that use Microsoft Forms for their Year 11, what's it called, research project, because they can share this with people outside of the department. This is another example. So this is how you can use Microsoft Forms, and this one is multiple choice questions, but you can use that, you can add pictures. So this is an example here. I might be having my student representative vote, and I can put in a picture of the students that have nominated so that people, even if they can't read or don't know the person's name, can still vote. And again, this one is branching. So if I pick what team I'm in, I can then put in the options for those people from that team. And then the last example is an assignment submission example. So you might not be using something like Class Teams or Google Classroom, but you might still want students to submit work to you in a way that is traceable. So you can do this through Microsoft Forms because you're allowed to upload files. It's quite nice. There's a limit of 1 gigabyte per question, which means that you can get students who are doing media arts, for example, or visual arts to upload files that are quite large. Now, just with file submission, when you ask for upload files, this is only for internal. So this only works for people that have an @schools email address. So you can't share this form with parents and get them to upload birth certificates or things like that, unfortunately. And that's not a restriction that we've decided. That's a Microsoft restriction, rather. So unfortunately, we can't change that. Now, before we get into the actual creating, I'm going to show you one more form. And the reason why I picked this one is that it's got quite a few responses. So as well as creating forms, you get a really nice shot of the data that you can, or what people submit. So this one here is a training certificate form. I can see really quickly how many responses. If, depending on the type of question, I get some nice visual graphs in here. If it's a question where people have had to type in a response, I get a nice word cloud as well. And so it's a really nice quick overview. Now, if someone was to fill this in now, I'd see straight away that responses would change to 108. Also, if I click on Open in Excel, all that data gets put into a spreadsheet. And so that means I can manipulate the data, I can do extra or perform extra things on that data. So it's quite handy. I can also click on View Results, and then I can go into the individual people and what they put in there for that individual response. Okay, now, any questions so far? Feel free to type into the chat or to come off mute? No? Okay, so now we might get into the hands-on section. So, as mentioned before, there's a few ways to get into Forms. Forms is only a browser application, so it's not available as a desktop app. So you need to get to it, first of all, by opening a browser. So if you haven't already, can you open a browser? And then the first way is by going into the EdPass portal. Grab that URL in case you don't have that already. Now, the reason why I like using the EdPass portal is it means that you're signed in with your @schools email. Now, I mentioned earlier that it was great that people said they were from corporate. We're in the unfortunate position of having two tenancies. So if you're in corporate, as well as having an @schools email address, you also have the SA.gov email address. Now, you need to be really careful when you're using Forms in particular. If you're wanting people with an @schools email address to fill in that form, you need to be absolutely certain that you've logged on and you're using your @schools version of Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Forms. Otherwise, you're going to run into trouble when you try and send the link out and people with @schools emails only can't access the form. So if you're not sure, I'll just pop back into Forms for a moment, which tenancy you're in. If you hover up here, if you're in the education one, it should have the name of the business unit here. Otherwise, it will have education. And if you click on here, you see here it's got my SA.gov, not my SA.gov, my schools.sa.au email address. If you click on that icon and you've got your SA.gov, that's when you need to sign out and sign in with your SA Schools. Okay. Are there examples on in the template gallery? Poll, no, other options, school library. There are lots of different templates that you can use and manipulate. Polls are a little bit different from Forms. So polls are within teams. They build off Forms, but they're within teams. But Forms, you've got quizzes, you've got forms, and within those two, there's a whole lot of templates. We have a look at them in a moment. So if you've gone into the EdPass portal, you'll find Forms here, and when you click on it, it should automatically log you in. Fingers crossed mine works. If you haven't gone in through EdPass, you can, I'll just do a new tab, and you're using Edge, go to the M365 logo, click on Home, and then down the side you might see the forms. If it doesn't appear for you, if you click on Apps, and then All Apps, then you'll see Forms down here. There we are, and you can get to it from there. Same interface. Now, if your forms look slightly different, Microsoft has just done a few updates, and one of my accounts has the new forms and one has this form. So you might see some of the icons look slightly different from what you're seeing on my screen. Okay, can you all give me a virtual thumbs up with the reactions when I know you're in Forms, just so that I don't lose anyone behind. Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks, Catherine. I'll just give people one more moment to make sure they've got it open up. Thanks, Natasha. And you're seeing the side of my head because I've got one screen here and one screen here. Okay, so we might get started. So up here, I've got 3 options. Now, the quick import is really handy if you've got lots of paper-based quizzes. So you might have PDFs that you used to use with students and print them off. You can use the quick import option to get forms to convert them to forms. Now, you do need to do quite a bit of editing, but it is a really cool feature. Then we've got new quiz, and then we got new form. So for today, we're going to start off by doing a new form. So if you can click on new form, and then it's going to ask you to give it a title. So I'm just going to call this forms training example. And if you want, you can put in a description. You don't have to, but if you're doing the form for parents, for example, it's good practice to put in a description. Okay. Thankfully, it does spell check. You can also, if you want, add an image in here. So at some sites, the image search is blocked. If it is, you can go to your OneDrive, and if you've got any images in OneDrive, not sure that I do. Oh, yes, I do. So that's good. You can add them there, or you can click on the upload to upload from your device.
Can you show again how to do that, how to find the image?
Yep. So here I am. Oh, I've got froms instead of forms. So let's change that. And then to add an image in here, if I've clicked off, I can just click back in, and then there's that little picture icon here. So if I click there, I then get this second menu come up. If it's turned on, I can search through Bing. Otherwise, I can click on OneDrive if I've got an image saved in my OneDrive. So it should come at the home page unless you've used forms before, or upload to upload from my computer. So I'm just going to click on that one and click add, and then my image is in. Okay, so we've got our heading, we've got a bit of a description, and now we're going to go ahead and put in our questions. So Microsoft uses a bit of AI to give you some recommended questions. I find that none of these actually are ever appropriate, so I'm just going to close that down. If you want to see what they suggest, you can just click on that to get that back up. But we're going to start, or we're going to just run through the different questions types and add them as we go. So click on choice to begin with. So choice allows us to put in responses for multiple choice, or we can toggle this one on here, which means that people can select more than one option. So in here, I'm just going to put in what day is it? And it's given me some choices. So in this case, that is really handy. I'm just going to try again. Add all here. Now this one probably isn't great for multiple answers, but if I did want people to choose more than one, I could do that here. Now, if this is toggled on, I can also set how many responses people can do. So for example, if I change that question from instead of what day it is to what days can you do parent-teacher interviews, for example, then I might want to limit how many days people pick, for example. Now, also, as well as multiple answers, we've got something here called required. So that means if that's toggled on, people have to put a response in here, otherwise it won't let them submit the form. I'm just going to toggle off the multiple answers as well, because if I do that, I've got some additional things or features. So the 3 dots here, in all the Microsoft apps, if you click on that, it gives you some more options. So I'm going to just click there, and then I've got some additional options. Now, because it's one answer only, I can do shuffle options, which will mean that they appear in a random order. I can click on drop down, and what that means is if I click on preview, is that it's a drop down rather than having all the questions on the one page. Now, I'm just going to click back up here to go back into my editing. Why would I want that? Well, if I've got lots of responses in here, and 7 is quite a lot, but if you can have up to, I think it's up to 300 responses, and if I've got 300 responses, that's a lot for someone to take in. So I might want to do that 3 dots and drop down if I've got lots of responses, so that my form doesn't blow out to a huge length because it's taking in all those responses. I can also do this subtitle. So what this is it allows me to add some extra information. So I might have my question there, and I might then put in here, tick 1 option only. So it allows me to add some further information. So that is the multiple choice. Oh, the other thing is here is that add other option. If you click there, what that allows is it puts in a text box so people can type in something. So if you click add option and type other like that, that's not going to work. They won't be able to type in it. But if you, let's get rid of that other, if you click on that add other option here, that puts in a text box. So if I click back on preview up the top, if I click other now, you see it's given me a text box and I can type in a response. So that's quite handy if you're wanting people to say or comment on what they're putting in for that other response. Okay, so back in editing, I'm going to click on add new, and this time I'm going to select text. So similar to the multiple choice, I've got my standard question and then I've got some more options in here. So because I did subtitles for the question before, it's automatically thought that I want subtitles. Again, if I want to remove that for this particular question, I can click on the 3 dots and tick off the subtitles. Notice it doesn't remove it for the one above, just this question. I can choose whether the question is going to be long answer or short answer. So it gives me some extra space in that box. And here I'm going to put in name the type of animals you have as pets. Okay, so that's a question that lots of people might respond differently to. Again, I can make it required if I want people to be forced to respond. And I can also add some restrictions. So for this particular type of question, if I wanted people to only type in numbers, so say I've said, how old are you? Or how many seats do you have in your car for transporting colleagues, for example, I could restrict this to a number, and I could say that it has to be between 1 and 10, for example. So now if I go back to my preview again, in that box, if I try and type in 10, or something that's not a number is going to give me an error and it won't let me submit that. So let's put in 3 instead and click back to go back into editing mode. Any questions? We're all okay so far?
How did you get to restrict the numbers in the box? Sorry, I'm sort of trying to do it and watch, and I'm not doing either very well.
It's all good. It's great to have questions because sometimes I do move a bit fast. So let me go back. So I've got my question here. I've gone to the 3 dots and I've ticked that restriction. So if it disappears, it doesn't have anything. People can just type whatever they want. But if I go to the 3 dots and click on restrictions, I'm then able to say that it's a number if I want them to put in any number that doesn't matter what, or I can put in some additional restrictions around what type of number they can put in. So this case I've got between, could do not between, in which case they'd have to put in 0 or decimals and numbers above 10, etc.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Yep.
Okay, so let's do add new again. And the next one is rating. This one's pretty straightforward. Again, we can put in a question. How ready are you for the holidays? And you can choose how many stars you want the rating out of. So it's between 2 and 10. You can choose what symbol you have in here. So let's choose ticks. And then again, if you click here, you can choose label. Now, label lets you clarify what number 1 means and what number 10 means. It doesn't let you label each of them, but it lets you label the lowest and the highest. So in here, I might put not ready. And in here, I might put very ready. Okay, and again, if we go to preview, let's have a look at what that looks like. So I can tick what I want before I submit. You'll notice again here, these 2 are required, so it won't let me submit until I put in a response in here. Now, if I wanted to make that not required, again, if I click in there, I can toggle that off, and then it doesn't matter whether the person responds or not, they can still submit. Okay, so that one's fairly straightforward. Again, just like we did in the title, wherever you see this icon, it means you can add a picture. So that's really nice if you wanted to support students. You might want to add a picture that's appropriate to the question, for example, for multiple choice ones as well. Providing, whoops, it's not going to let me normally. Let's change it from a drop down. So if it's not a drop down, you can see you can add a picture for each of those options as well, which is again quite handy if you're wanting to do things or you need to give that extra support to your students. Okay, so let's go now and click add new again. And the next one is fairly straightforward. It's a date picker. So what day is your birthday? And that doesn't give you much in terms of choices, just the subtitle or the required. That would just bring up a little calendar for them to select a date from. Okay, add new again. And now we've got some extra options that are hidden. So if we click on the arrow down, we've got ranking, like it, upload file, net promoter score, and also this thing called section. So let's go ahead and click on ranking. And again, what this question does is it allows people to move their different options up and down. So I might put in here, rank your favorite color or colors, and then I might put red, blue, and green. Again, any of these I can add an option to, and if I click in preview now, you'll see that if I was doing that, I could move those around and sort them into the order I want. Now there is, with this option, there should be the option to shuffle them as well. So again, this is handy if you want them to appear in a random order. Let's do add new again. And this time we're going to do the like it. So this is the one that gives you the grid where you can put the question and then the different options. So again, this is really handy if you've got statements where all the responses could be similar. So if you're asking people how they feel about something. So let's put in here, how tired are you at 9 a.m, at 12 p.m, at 3 p.m, at 12 a.m. A little, a lot, asleep already. Now here, oops, asleep. Now here you see I've got more options than I wanted for this particular question. So again, if I click in, I can just click on the option and click on the rubbish bin to delete that. If I don't have enough options, again, I can click on the add to add as many rows as I want there, and then add statements down here. And I'm going to go ahead and delete those ones because I just want the 3 options. And again, in here on the 3 dots here, don't have many options. Branching I'll talk about a little bit later, but subtitle again is just adding some further instructions. Okay, any questions? Everyone's coping okay so far?
Right here, I'm not able to use some of the cells. If you've made an error and you try to go back on it, you can't seem to be able to override for some reason.
Sorry.
So if you go back to if you go to step 2 to and name the type of animals you have as pets, and the window underneath that, it's come up as a date, and I cannot.
Okay.
Can't remove it.
So here, if you go to the 3 dots here and you untick the restrictions.
3 dots up in the top right corner.
So click into that question first. The 3 dots in the bottom extra.
And
untick restrictions.
It doesn't say, it just says subtitle add branching.
Okay, so is yours a short answer or a long answer?
It could be whatever.
Doesn't matter?
No, it doesn't
okay.
matter. I thought even if they type in,
and you're positive that when you did an insert new, you did text for that one? I'm not.
Yep.
Yep.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll just keep going. Yep. Thanks.
Okay. If you want afterwards, you could send me a screenshot and we could work out what's going wrong. But we might look at that after, if that's all right, Ray?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Okay, so we're nearly at the end of the question types. Upload file I mentioned earlier. So again, especially if you're in corporate and you're needing people with @schools email addresses, so students or staff in sites, it's imperative that you've made sure that you're making the form with your @schools email address, because you can only upload files from a form that lives in the same tenancy. So you have to have that @schools email address. With upload files, this is where you can say how many files you want the person to upload. So you might want them, for instance, to upload 3 pictures of their favourite hobbies. And again, thank you for spell check. So here I only want them to do 3. I don't want them to add 10, for example. And then for each of those files, you can set the limit. So it could be 100 meg or 1 GB. Now, when you do this, when the person uploads those files, they get saved in your OneDrive if the form lives in your personal OneDrive, or if you've moved the form to a team, they live in that team space. And again, here we do have an option, which is file type. So you can limit what type of file people upload. So here I've said I want pictures. So I don't want people to put in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDFs, video or audio. I just want them to upload images. So again, that's really handy if you want to be quite specific about the type of file you want people to upload. Okay, now there is another thing about this type of file. I'm just going to skip ahead for a moment and go to the 3 dots. Oh, sorry, not the 3 dots. Go to this collect responses. Now this collect responses will give me a link that I can share with the people that I want to fill out the form. And you'll notice here, this anyone can respond is grayed out. And that is purely because I've added this question in about uploading. So if I delete that, so let's delete that and go to collect responses now, you'll see I've got that option for anyone can respond. So again, just bear in mind, if you're going to add and you choose the upload file, that means that you're not able to share the form with people outside of the department. Okay, any questions around that? All good? Okay, so the last one is something called a Net Promoter Score. And this is something that is used in research to kind of work out who's really in favour of something or who's really against. So it's always out of 10. You can put in your question. Let's just keep the one that they put in. And if I go to preview, you can see it's like that here. It's only one, it's not all of them, but in the results, it's going to, so it didn't do any that are required. What day is it? Let's do that. And then I'm just going to click submit so you can see, whoops, you can see what that looks like in the results. So I did that really quick, but it's just so you can see what the net promoter thing looks like. So you can see here, because I clicked 5, that means I'm passive. I don't really care. I'm not a promoter or a detractor. I'm blasé about what it is. So again, this looks a bit funny, but if you're dealing with data, this is one of the well-known ways to record whether something is having a positive or a negative effect on people. Okay, so after you've added questions, the last bit that you can add is something called sections. Now, sections are really handy if you've got a form that has got a lot of questions in it, because what it does is it breaks that form up. So if I've got a form that I'm getting parents to fill out, and there's some information at the beginning, but then there's some quite detailed stuff, and it's about 15 or 20 questions. If I use sections, I can break those questions up. So if I call this section likes, for instance, I've created it. I've got this question here that I want to move in. All I have to do is click and drag, and then I've got this. Let's put this one in there as well. Click and drag, and I've got them in sections. So again, if I go to preview now, you can see I've got my questions there. So let's quickly do the ones that I have to do. And then when I click next, it's now going to give me the next set of questions. So again, not just adults or parents, but students, if they get overwhelmed with lots of things on the screen, you can, if you break them up into different sections, it can help with anxiety and things like that. Okay. You can, as well as dragging and dropping things, use these little arrows to move questions up and down. So that's quite handy. And now that we've added some questions, we're going to go in and look at the setting. Oh, we're going to go in and look at styles first. So yours probably looks the same as mine in terms of colour scheme. If I click in this styles though, I can start to change it up a bit and make it look a bit more attractive. So there's a whole range of interactive and pre-made patterns that you can choose from. If you click view all, you'll get to see the whole gallery. So if I click on that, for example, it's going to put that behind me. You can add background music if you wanted to. I find personally that some of these AI ones that have moving things behind them are a bit distracting. So personally, I tend to go for the ones that are just static, but it's completely up to you. You can also click on this plus, and that allows you to upload or put in a customized color. So customized colors, they want you to put in a hex code, and that's the computer kind of language for saying what colors are on here. So that's really handy if you've got a form that you're making for your school, for example, and you want to use the school colors. So I've just put in to the chat this URL that is called Image Color Picker, and this one allows you to upload an image, say your school emblem, and then put in the hex code, and then it will change the theme. I don't think I've got a hex code. Do I have a hex code on hand? Yep, I've got the department colours. So I'm just going to copy that in and put it in here. So you see this is our department till. So I've done that and back, and it should allow me to pick that now, or that one there, and you can see it's changed. I can also choose some different ways that will display as well. And if I want to see what that looks like for the person filling in the form, I can just click on the preview and see what that looks like. Now, in the preview mode as well, you might have noticed this icon. That's Immersive Reader. So Forms is quite accessible for people. If I click on there, it's actually going to bring me into something called Immersive Reader, but that allows me to click on the play and hear what's written. So Forms, all of these questions, I could click on there if I couldn't read that question, or if I was having difficulty, English wasn't my first language, for example, I can click on there and access Immersive Reader. Okay, so back in here, we've done the styles, and you can spend a long time playing with that. But yeah, just choose something that makes sense. And as I said, these ones here, to me, they're a bit distracting, so I tend to avoid them and just go for the static pictures. Okay, as well as style, before we look at collect responses, let's go into these 3 dots up here and have a look at some of these here. So this first one, collaborate or duplicate. If you're working on a form and you want other colleagues to collaborate on that form, sorry, just minimize that. You can click on here and click there and then get the link and pass that on to a colleague. Now again, you've got some options in here. If you choose the default, you can just send that to anyone, and whoever has that link can go in and make edits and change that form. If you click on specific people within the department, that will want you to add an email address or a DL you can put in there, and then only people within that with that email address or that DL will be able to go in and edit that form. So that's a bit safer. The other thing in here is the get link to duplicate. So this is really handy. If, for example, you've got a form that you want all your teachers to send out to their parents, but you don't want all the answers being added to one form. You want each class to have their own form with their own answers. If you click on get link to duplicate, you can copy that link in, and what that will mean is the teachers can click on that duplicate link and they get their own copy of the form that lives in their own OneDrive, and they can collect all their data, but all the questions are the same as the one that you put together that you want everyone to use. So that's quite handy. Back in the 3 dots in the settings, if you click in settings, you've also got some really handy things. So again, this is only people in the department because we've got that question in here about uploading. So if you've still got an uploading question, I'm just going to go in and delete that so that when I go back into the settings, I can see all the options. So if I want to share this form with people outside of the department, I want to click on anyone can respond. If I want it to be internal only, so that's staff and students, I click on that second option, and then I've got a few more features that I can click. So if I want it to be anonymous, I can untick the record name, and then I'll get the data, but I won't know who's submitted the form. So that's quite handy if you want feedback, for example, or people to add information or ideas, and you want it to be a safe space and you don't want people to be scared about putting their name towards something. However, if you do want that information, make sure that's ticked. The other one is 1 response per person. So that means that I can limit how many times someone submits the same form. So again, this is really handy if, for example, you're using it for voting. You don't want the same person submitting the form 10 times and skewing the vote. So you can click that one response per person. Again, you've got the option of going in and specifying individual email addresses or DLs as well. I'm just going to click back into that one for now though. In the response options section as well, there's also a lot of different things you can look at. So if you want the form to only be available from a certain date and finish on a certain date, you can use that or do that in the settings. If you've developed the form but you're not ready for people to respond yet, but you're not sure about end dates and start dates, you can untick that and also give people a message. Sorry, not yet ready. Back later. Email. So you can really personalize the message people see. If you untick that accept responses. If it's a quiz, you can do the shuffle questions. So this isn't a quiz, this is a form, so that's why I can't do that. And disable question number for responses. A respondents gets rid of the question numbers. A progress bar lets people know how many questions they've got left. Now this one is already ticked because I've got that one response per person, but I can also hide that if I don't want that visible. And again, if you want people to have a nice message at the end, you can customize the message they see when they submit the form. This is quite a new feature. It means that if they've submitted the form and you tick that, they can go back and edit their responses after they've submitted it. So that's quite handy if you're using forms with students, for example, and you want them to be able to go in and edit the responses before the due date. Now, get email notification for each response. If you tick that, the person who created the form in the first place will get an email when someone submits the form. Allow receipt of responses after submission allows people to receive an email when they've filled out the form. So they're those two options. Okay, any other questions around the settings?
That's pretty good.
Yep, excellent. Now this print form, it won't show it very nicely. So I wouldn't really recommend that you do the print form. Feedback is giving feedback to Microsoft. Multilingual allows you to do translations, but it doesn't do the translating for you. You actually have to type it in. So yes, helpful, but not 100% helpful. Okay, so now we've done those two, there's two more features that we want to look at, and we've only got 3 minutes left. So I don't think we get to quizzes today, unfortunately, but I will follow up with some resources so that you can further your learning there. But let's click on collect responses because this bit is really important. So one thing that people often do, I'll just close that down, is they think if they copied this URL there and send that to people, that they'll be able to fill in the form, or they go to preview and they copy it here and they'll be able to fill in the form. This URL here has got this design page v2 in it, and that tells me that this is actually the editing version. So people will receive an error unless you've given them the rights to edit. So instead of just copying the URL, I need to click on collect responses. I can then go in, if I haven't already set this up in the settings, and choose who I want to respond. And then I can copy this link. I can click and shorten the URL, which is quite handy. If I want to, that's when I can email a DL or individual people. QR code. So this is really handy if you want parents, for example, to fill in a form. You could print the QR code and have it on the door of the kindy or in the front office, and then people can just scan it to access the form. And the last thing here is embedding. So, for example, if you've using something called Sway for newsletters, or if you've got your school website and you want the form to appear on the website or in the Sway, you can copy this code in there, and then the form will appear embedded in that web page or the Sway. One other thing that I sometimes trip up on is I forget to click the copy. So with all these options, don't forget to click copy, otherwise you won't get that copy link. Okay, and then the other feature, which is really cool, is if you're using forms and you're doing a presentation at the front of the class, for example, if you click on present, it gives you a nice view, and you can see that was my jumble that went in there. But if students are filling out the form either from the link, or if they've got an iPad, for example, they could scan the QR code, you'll see these responses come up as people choose them. You can see that one person submitted and it's 100% for Friday, for example. So that's a nice visual way to present your form or your quiz for people who might be filling it out in an audience to see. Okay, we're right on 4:30. There are a couple more things that I want to quickly talk about before I let you go. So one of those is, where do I go to get some more information? Microsoft has these support pages. So there is one for forms with some links around training. I'll just copy this into the chat. If you do go through this page, it won't record your training, but they are some quite nice, simple tutorials that you can do. The other website that does record your training is Microsoft Learn. So if you haven't already come across Microsoft Learn, this is all free training that Microsoft allows you to access. And we do recommend that you log in with your @schools, or create a login with your @schools email address, and then that will record it. So if you need to prove to your teacher's registration or something that you've done a certain amount of hours, you can get a transcript to prove that you've done some learning. We also have a YouTube channel in our, so it's the Technology and Platform Adoption YouTube channel. And I don't have the link to it. I will send the link out to this after, but there's a link around forms. There's a playlist for forms that you can access. Now, most of these, unless they're a webinar recording, are quite short, showing you how to do something quite concisely. So again, I'll send this out this link out in an email. But if you're not sure how to do something, it's worth having a look on here. And lastly, if you're not already a member, the other place you can go for help is our M365 Apps Support and Collaboration team. So I do encourage you to join this if you aren't already a member. And there is a channel for Microsoft Forms. So there's lots of people in the department. There's over 1,500 people in this team. So if you have a problem or something's not working, you can type in a post, and someone from the Technology and Platform Adoption team, which is soon to be Digital Skills, or another colleague or staff member of the department will hopefully be able to help you. And with that, I think I've probably talked enough. So let me just minimize that again. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. I will stay around for a little bit longer. We do have a feedback form which I will pop into the chat as well, which we'd love you to fill out. We do look at all your feedback and it does help us refine. How do you save your work? Excellent question, Rolly. Because it's a web-based application and it's in the cloud, it saves automatically. So let me go back into that one that I did. I'm going to close down the present. If I click into forms up the top left now, I'll see my recent, that new form that I've just created. Now, if it's a form I created a long time ago, I haven't looked at it in a while, I can click in the My Forms and it should pop up in there. Now, if it shows a limited number, so if it's not in this section here, you can click on the Show More and then you'll see all the forms that you've created. How do we join the Microsoft support team? There is a link. Let me just pop that into the chat. And then you can click on that and I will let you in. There we go. That's our YouTube channel. Thanks, Suzanne, for adding that one as well. We have recorded this session. I might stop the recording now. It does take us a little bit of time to get the recording up, but once that's up, I'll send you a link with some additional information around the things that we didn't quite cover from the handout and a link to the recording as well.